We welcome those of you who have been watching the Miami, Pittsburgh, and the Denver, Detroit games. The big story in the NFL today involves Walter Payton. At Soldier Field in Chicago, the Bears lead the Saints 13-7, courtesy of Payton's one-yard touchdown run late in the first half. Payton carried 15 times in the half for 64 yards. He needs 3 to pass Jim Brown, could get it on his first carry of the third quarter. The Bears in front by 6 at halftime. In the game many of you are watching, the Dolphins appear on their way to a record of 6-0. They have knocked David Woodley, the Steeler quarterback, out of the game. He's been replaced by Mark Malone. It's a homecoming for Dan Marino, the Dolphin quarterback who starred in his collegiate days at Pittsburgh. He's thrown 2 touchdown passes in the first half. This one to Bruce Hardy covering 3 yards, his 16th of the season. Now here's number 17. He leads the NFL in this category, of course. This will cover some 34 yards to another Dolphin tight end, Joe Rose. Then later in the first half, Bob Baumhauer, the defensive tackle, picked up a fumble, brought it back 30 yards for a touchdown. That's where they stand, 21-0 in favor of Miami. At halftime at the Silverdome in Pontiac, the Broncos lead the Lions 21-7. Dan Reeves' team already led it 7-0 when this play occurred. Billy Sims carrying for the Lions. You see he has trouble finding the handle. Then it's knocked loose by this hit from cornerback Louis Wright, right into the hands of defensive lineman Rulon Jones. He rumbles into the end zone, and it's 14-0 in favor of the Broncos. The Lions cut their deficit in half on this bootleg run by Gary Danielson. He'll fake the handoff, take it left, spin away from a tackler, and it was 14-7. But later, John Elway threw 42 yards to Steve Watson for a Bronco TD. That makes it 21-7 at the half. Halftime in Dallas, Raphael Septien just connected from 37 yards out in the closing seconds, brings the Cowboys to within a point of the Cardinals, who lead it by a score of 14-13. Big test for St. Louis, a good team that plays in a division which includes the Redskins and Cowboys. They were 0-4 against those two clubs a year ago. Bill?
That's right. Well, Jets in Kansas City, a couple of 3-2 teams, and this figured to be a day when the quarterbacks would have to throw under pressure. If you remember last week, the Chiefs sacked Paul McDonald 11 times, but so far the Jets have protected Pat Ryan. Joe Walton's made several changes on defense. He looked on as Kansas City took the lead on 3 Nick Lowry field goals, one of which was set up by this 25-yard run by Theotis Brown. Brown over 70 yards in the first half. In the second quarter, the Jets were driving, but Pat Ryan was intercepted going for the bomb by number 31, Kevin Ross. The Jets scored just before halftime after a Theotis Brown fumble. Tony Page went over from the 1. The Jets have been outplayed, but they lead it 10-9 at the half. New England and Cleveland, when these teams met a year ago, the Browns shut out the Patriots 30-0, and so far the Browns defense has kept the Patriots out of the end zone. 3 Matt Barr field goals, the story in Cleveland, 9-3. Washington and Indianapolis, the Redskins have won 3 straight. They're clicking on all phases on offense. John Riggins has gained 86 yards. Joe Theismann has thrown 3 touchdown passes to Art Monk of 10, 47, and 16 yards. Theismann over 200 yards in the first half. Minnesota and Tampa Bay, a Central Division battle. Vikings didn't score a touchdown last week. They have 3 today, but they're all tied up as James Wilder has scored on an 11-yard run in the second quarter. It's 21-21 at Tampa Stadium. Philadelphia and Buffalo. The Bills have struggled. They've lost 7 straight, going back to 2 games last year, and they're losing today 17-10 at Rich Stadium. Bob?
All right, Bill, thanks very much. Bill McAtee mentioned the 86 yards gained by John Riggins today at the Hoosier Dome for the Redskins. If he can gain a total of 118, he needs 34 more, he'll pass a milestone of his own this afternoon. He'll become the 5th player in NFL history to go over 10,000 yards. We'll be back following these messages and a word from your local stations. Continuing now at halftime, it's a doubleheader day on NBC. That means there's a lot more action upcoming. So here's a preview. The late games today on NBC. Something's got to give in Cincinnati. Both the Bengals and the Oilers are 0-5. In our featured contests, a rematch of last year's AFC title game as the Seahawks take on the Raiders in L.A. Both clubs are 4-1 in the AFC West. That David Craig to Steve Largent connection is clicking for Seattle. This game shapes up as a great rivalry.
Sure, you have to get fired up for the Raiders. Bottom line, they're world champs. You want to beat the best.
I think the game plan is precise and diversified, whereas other teams, I don't think, take the time as Seattle does to prepare for us.
Seattle's preparation has to include plenty of thought about the Raiders secondary, including Mike Davis and, of course, Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes. Meanwhile, in Green Bay today, an aerial show could be on tap. Some of the great receivers in the game will be on display. Dan Fouts' targets include the acrobatic Wes Chandler and, of course, Kellen Winslow, while Lynn Dickey can throw to John Jefferson and James Lofton. That's what's coming up later today on NBC. All right, Ahmad, that Raiders-Seahawks game. The Seahawks have the type of defense which, when playing well, forces a lot of turnovers. I would think that would be one of the keys for them. They're going to have to take the ball away from the Raiders if they hope to win. You know, Bob, one of the strange things about it, and it makes no sense to me, Reggie McKenzie tells me the way you beat the Raiders is you dominate their defense. Now, they've got one of the biggest, strongest defenses in the league. But the way you do that is you got to run the ball. And that means Franco Harris has got to have a big day. Which he hasn't had all season long. Nothing close to it. Played well last week, but he's going to have to play much better in order for them to win the game this week. All right, Ahmad, let's shift gears here a little bit, turning over to Pete Axtell. In Europe, they are several hours ahead of us, and one of Europe's biggest horse races has already been run today in Paris. Tell us about it.
Yes, Bob, horsemen all over Europe point all year for the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe at Longchamp, and it was held today 1.5 miles over deep turf, a true championship test. And let's go to Peter O'Sullivan's stretch call.
As they swing for home now, it's Strawberry Road who's coming to take it up for Australia. Strawberry Road is in the lead, being pressed by Sagas and Yves Saint Martin. Then on the far side, Esprit du Nord, unleashing a run towards the stand side is Sun Princess, being chased by Time Chana. But it's Sagas who's coming to challenge Strawberry Road, with Northern Trick putting in a tremendous run. Sagas has come to take it up to Yves Saint Martin. It's Sagas in the lead from Northern Trick second, Strawberry Road third. As they race into the closing stages, Sagas and Yves Saint Martin being pressed by Cash Asmussen on Northern Trick. But as they come to the line, Sagas has won the After Triumph. Second is Northern Trick. It's a photo for third with Femi just getting up to be third.
You know, it's interesting. This race has belonged to fillies for the last 5 years. Last year, it belonged to the Horse of the World all along. Well, today, a colt won it, Sagas. But All Along stable isn't too happy. She ran third, and Sagas is her stablemate. We hope we'll see one or both of them at the Breeders' Cup November 10th, Bob.
Axe, you, of course, had a $2 ticket on Sagas today, right?
It was a 40-franc Jumeli ticket, actually. That's what they call it over there.
All right, Axe, thanks very much. Stay with us now as NFL 84 halftime activities will continue following these messages.